Hey guys, Ted Santos, the host of Straight Talk, that talk show that is made for men by men, except ladies, not even you want to miss it. And as you see in this title, the title is What Not to Do When You're Seeking Opportunities Abroad. This is a short version, and I made a much longer version, and I put that on Patreon. You'll see my link below to get on Patreon. I need you to like this video, share it. Every man needs to hear what I'm going to say. I often speak about women and relationships and social challenges, money, finance, business. I especially love speaking about business. But today I'm going to have a conversation about women, and I think I'm going to do it from a perspective you haven't heard. No one's saying this. They are not even entering this world, even though they should. And the subtitle for this, especially the longer version that's on Patreon, is Are You Being Crushed by Psychological Warfare? Yes. And I'm going to kind of walk up to that. You'll get hints of that. This past Sunday, I did a show, and Dennis Sperling was my guest. And for 2 hours, I interviewed him. A number of people called in and asked him questions as well. He gave some really good insight on the kind of person he is, his accomplishments. If you haven't heard that video, I strongly suggest you check it out. It's worth listening to. And he talked about life in other countries. Men from the U.S. are finding opportunities in so-called third world or undeveloped countries. And since I've lived in several of these so-called third world undeveloped countries, it was good to hear him say that calling places like Dominican Republic, Brazil, Colombia, and other places, calling them undeveloped or third world is really a disservice to those countries. And it's a way to invalidate those countries as though the people are less than, not as smart, not as accomplished, and that they are destitute, poor, and trying to escape and run out. So hear him talk about that in the video. What my reason for having him was there are opportunities in those countries and more, especially if you have something to offer. First, you need to get to know the people, the culture, and the language. And if you do that, if you get to know the people, it'll make it easier for you to understand what you have to offer. And of course, Dennis spoke about the other thing, that men have great appreciation for beautiful women in other countries. Dennis made a big point of how feminine women are as you go abroad. And he talked about how much respect women have for men. And with that said, I want to offer a word of caution. His point about learning the culture of the country is extremely important. If you're from the U.S. and you see women as not being as feminine and respectful of men here in this country, it may have something to do with the way men were raised in the U.S. Men are taught to be egalitarian. You're educated to see women as your equal. In fact, in the U.S., you're taught that everyone is equal to everyone else. And women have pushed for that mindset because they really can't compete with men head to head, man to man. And as a result, if you lower the bar by saying we're all equal, you lower the bar for women to enter the workplace. And with lower standards for what you expect from women, that has seeped into our social dynamics. And now men and even women have lower expectations for women in relationships. You're even told as a man to find your feminine side. Many men in other countries, well, they're actually not accustomed to that. They're not looking for their feminine side. They're not raised the way men are in the U.S. So the women expect masculinity and don't view men or masculine men as toxic. And while there are many things women around the world share, like being more emotional than men, there's a level of masculinity that women just respect in other countries. And if you go abroad and attempt to show you're more egalitarian than men in their countries, you just might be taken advantage of. And what's worse is you'll eventually create women who believe they are entitled in the same way they are here in the US. So as you attempt to escape the entitled women in the US, you'll start creating the same entitled females in other countries. And initially, you just won't see it. It'll appear they appreciate you more than the men in their countries. And really, that's how it started here in the US. Men kept one-upping one another. Hey, if he takes you to the movies, I'll take you for ice cream. And then the guy says, well, I'll take you to dinner. Well, I'll buy you a car. I'll take you to Muhammad. You're just constantly one-upping. And because so many men who have greater means than the average, those men with means are going to other countries, you can do that. And that's how it started here in the US. Men of means, and eventually it spread. Now, think about the US. At the same time, men are one-upping one another. The feminists told women in the US that they're no longer responsible for playing a feminine role. In fact, women here were told that femininity is a sign of weakness. Women were told to get in touch with their masculine side, as you guys were told to be more feminine. And men in the US embrace that philosophy. As a side, you better believe that women around the world have all been exposed to feminism. Just don't be fooled by that. However, many women abroad have maintained femininity in traditional roles. So currently, women in Latin America, for example, understand there are roles for a woman. They do not debate that. They embrace it. Except if you're focused on treating her like an equal, she will develop the same entitlement women have in the US. And what you will find is that it is often not the women who create the problems by themselves. Men contribute to those problems. In the US, it is men who have stopped setting boundaries with women. You believe women are equal to you, including your daughters. And you believe you have to buy women. And you're taking that to Latin America or even Africa. And if you have to buy a woman, it makes you less than her. You don't even attempt. And so do not attempt to buy affection from women in other countries. She knows her affection is part of her role. She's not doing you a favor. She knows that that's who she is as a woman. In other words, I'm saying when you go abroad, you need to trash your upbringing from the US. You basically have the right to make demands on women abroad, and they'll actually fulfill them. You also need to understand she has expectations, except she's going to be more respectful about it. So my warning is that you don't go abroad and create the same entitled women that you have in the US. When you grow abroad, women will expect you to lead. They will be very confused if you don't lead them. And remember, leading is not force. And even though I know it may seem like that's what you've been told here, machismo and the men are so forceful, it's a firmness. It's a quiet firmness that's just always there. And men in other countries are not afraid to put their foot on the necks of their women. Men in the US stopped doing that. Everyone's paying a price for that. And now women in the US believe they have no boundaries. They even believe they're doing you a favor. So you'll end up going abroad, attempting to escape women here and repeating history and not see it. Because the men back in the 70s, 80s, they couldn't see what they were creating. So in closing, if you really observe what has happened between men and women, it's psychological warfare. It really is. Men have built all civilizations. And I'm not aware of any civilization that put women first, and those civilizations were successful and sustainable. If you put the women first and force the men to take care of the women and all of their needs, and men are discarded and seen as less valuable, someone will come in and crush you. You can fill 90% of your workforce with women and build homeless shelters for the men, and that will be a national security problem. Men build the civilizations, they create boundaries, and then build a military to protect it. If you put women in charge, well, you're going to have something you don't want. So, if you go abroad and you inadvertently attempt to bring the same mindset from here to other countries, you're going to get exploited, and you're going to end up with the same entitled, and you'll be imposing the same psychological warfare that was here. And you'll have history repeating itself. And I can cite 3 historical facts, examples where it's happened, because a lot of guys will say, oh, it's just a small percentage happening. It doesn't matter what percentage. It eventually will happen. And in my Patreon video, I actually cite those 3 sources. I encourage you to go to the link below and check out the Patreon. Like this video, share it. I'd like to hear your comments. I strongly urge you guys to not get caught up in the psychological warfare and then go abroad and repeat the same thing by imposing inadvertently psychological warfare on the women there, and it just backfires on you. Because where are you going to go next? You're going to find another planet where women haven't been exposed to feminism. So, like the video, share it, comment, and join me on Sundays for Straight Talk. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care. Bye.